Hello everyone, my name is Justin, aka Ghost Reader, and today I'm going to be doing part 1 of my February reads because I read a lot in February and I can't really cover that all in one video. So this first part 1 will be my African American Experience reads, and then part 2 will be like everything else, my readathons and all the miscellaneous other reads that I did in the month of February. So let's go ahead and get started with my African American reads, experience reads. So basically, they covered a period from basically slave time all the way kind of up to the present. So they were really good. I'm actually going to go in the order in which I read them. So the first one that I read was The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin, and this was a great book. I want to read more of James Baldwin after reading this book here because it was just simply great. The first part of this book is basically about he's writing a letter to his nephew about on the 100th year anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, and he basically is reflecting on what has gone on since then. And basically the fact is that not much has changed. Yes, African Americans do have freedom in a sense, but they're still considered second-class citizens in the United States, and he was reflecting on that. The second one, essay, which is the second one, which is the essay. Basically, he is talking about James Baldwin is talking about his own experiences as a child in Harlem, especially his experience with Christianity, and basically how the kind of his hypocrisy within it was impressed on him, how that influenced him, and also his experience with the Nation of Islam, which was led by Elijah Muhammad. I will talk more about these books and the themes and stuff that I learned about them in another video that will be full of spoilers. This one's going to be spoiler free, but I want to do a separate video where I sit down and have an in-depth discussion about the themes and stuff in these books that I've read, because they were all really good. But and basically also, and to continue what I said before I doing that side note, also he had a very kind of positive attitude about the outlook of things, and that we could change things, and that in helping ourselves, African Americans, and in helping ourselves, we'll also be helping white people as well, because by bringing our own selves up, we'll also be bringing them up with us. And basically the title, the Fire Next Time, is basically we have to do this soon or else we're going to face the fire next time, which is actually a reference to the Bible, in which God, when he's talking about the flood, God says, I destroyed the earth with water this time, the next time will be fire. So that's what we want to try to prevent. So that was a great book. I really enjoyed it, and of course, like I said, I'll be talking more in depthly about all these books and their themes in that discussion video coming out hopefully sometime this month. So the next book that I read was Native Boy by Richard Wright. This book is basically about an African American young man. I think he's 19 years old. He lives in Chicago. His family's poor. He's not really on the straight and narrow at all. And he gets a job. Basically, he's supposed to drive around this rich white family who also happens to own the apartment tenement that he's in. And basically, he ends up getting caught up in a crime. He actually commits a crime that basically leads into this whole big thing where he's trying to one, try to cover it up, and then two, capitalize on that crime, but he eventually gets caught. And basically the book is like talking about how Bigger relates to the world around him as African American man who basically isn't really allowed to participate in a lot of it. And he not only kind of the way hates society itself, but also hates himself, and how that hate of himself kind of affects his actions towards others and leads him to not only one crime but two crimes. And this was a really good book because it looked also at how a race plays into like how race and segregation and how constantly putting him down as a black man, as a black person, played into his own psyche, and how it's not just him. There could be a whole generation of people thinking like bigger. So it's a very good examination of how race affects, how race and racism in America has affected generations of people. Actually, a lot of these books discuss how racism and slavery, the dehumanizing of people, changes the way that people think, and make them into something that they wouldn't be otherwise. So this one was a good read, and if you get a chance to read it, I highly suggest it. Alright, the next book that I read was Beloved by Toni Morrison, and when I first started this book, I wasn't really drawn into it, but I say by the time Beloved comes around, from there on, I was completely game. I really wanted to see what would happen. Toni Morrison did a really great job on this book. So this book follows Septa, who, this is sometime after the Civil War. Septa lives in Ohio with her daughter Denver, and they live in a house that's haunted by a spirit. And a man, John D., who Septa knew from before, comes in, and basically he runs the ghost off. Not too long after the ghost runs off, this girl named Beloved shows up, and then the series of events happens surrounding Beloved that are quite interesting, and changes. And there's a change in the dynamics between Septa and Denver and her daughter when Beloved shows up. And this book basically it looks at the effects. Really, it looks at the effects of what slavery and dehumanization have on the person. Septa is filled with guilt about a choice that she makes, and whether or not you agree with a choice, you can agree that slavery and the dehumanization and the thought of what would happen, if the people involved in what she did were ever sent back there, played a part in what she did. And she's still dealing with that guilt, because she still kind of fully hasn't dealt with that. And you can also see from John D., where he's also still dealing with the effects of that dehumanization factor of what slavery has done to him as well. So I really, really enjoyed this book. It's a deep book. It's moving, and it's a powerful read, and I can see why it won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So if you haven't read Toni Morrison's Beloved, I suggest that you definitely read it. Next book I'm going to talk about is Brown Girl Dreamin' by Jacqueline Woodson, and this basically is a book of poetry about Jacqueline Woodson's life from the time she's born until she's going on into her teens, and basically it follows her life from living in Ohio with her father and mother until they split, and then she and her family moved to South Carolina with her grandparents. And while they are there, and then her mother moves off to New York to seek a better life, and she leaves the kids in South Carolina. So it talks more about her time with her grandparents until the time her mother has finally found a place for them in New York. She comes back, she gets her kids, and she takes them to New York with her. And there's also about her time there and dealing with the differences between down south, how down south was in New York. Also in this book, it looks at how her journey, I would say, and her coming to recognize that she wants to be a writer. She realizes that she's not like her sister, who is perfect, who was quote unquote perfect, and her brother, who's like into science and chemistry sets. When she's more into like writing, she begins to come into her own as the book progresses, and by the end she realizes that this is something that she wants to be. So this is a really great read. I enjoyed the poetry in the beginning of this book. She has a family tree, and also at the end she has pictures of her family, so you can see like who she's talking about through the book. So I mean, it basically goes through the ups and downs of her life, and it was a really good read. I suggest you read this book as well. The other the graphic novel read or collected comic volume that I read was Black, and basically the story is about Kareem, who basically is shot when he's misidentified as a criminal by the police, but he's shot and killed actually. But he basically comes back to life and is basically drawn into this world where he finds out that black people in this world are the only ones with powers. Not all black people, but a very small percentage of black people are born with superpowers. And his is unique. He can actually do a whole host of things with his power as well. Everyone else has one particular one. And basically, there's a secret government group that is out to exploit black people for their powers, and basically trying to find a way to give to, not just black people but to other people, for their own uses. And then between the superpower African Americans, there are two groups. You have one that says we need to hide and keep this to ourselves and not reveal ourselves to the world, take care of our own, while there's another side that says, like, no, we need to fight back and we need to do this publicly, and the revolution will be televised. And if those arguments sound familiar, it's probably because you've seen a movie within the last month or so. But this comic basically explores like the exploitation of black bodies. It's really well written. Really, I think the best part of this series is not just the story, but also the covers of this, which I will show more in the discussion video, because they in themselves are basically like a commentary of what is going on in America, and basically also the stories about overcoming hardships and stuff like that. So really good graphic novel, and they're also coming out with a volume 2, I believe, which I'm really interested to get and read. So my last read on my African American TBR, well, my African American read or book that I've read, because I've already read it, is the Classic Slave Narratives, and this was just absolutely amazing. All of them were good. The life of Olaudah Equiano, the history of Mary Prince, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and incidents in the life of the slave girl. But I think the best one for me was Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Absolutely amazing read. It basically is all of these are told by the slaves themselves. They either wrote them or they told it to someone else and someone wrote it down for them. And when you see what they've come through, all the trials and struggles they went through, especially the instance of the life of a slave girl, where they came from and how they got to where they were now, and the fact that they struggled and survived. It's a powerful read and very inspiring for me as African American to realize that, for me to be here, one of my ancestors, many of them went through this and actually survived. And they, because of what they did then, and struggling to survive and to provide for their families and for themselves, fight for their freedoms, I'm able to sit here on YouTube and do this today. So this is really great. If you ever get the chance to read any of these slaves narratives, I highly suggest you do. If you get this particular copy, do it and read them all, because they're all really great. And so that's my last read for the African American Experience reads, but I do need to talk about this one other book here, The Fortunes of Africa. So this book has 71 chapters. As of January, end of January, I had read 10 chapters. As of the end of February, as of today, I've only read 2 more. So I only have read a total of 12 chapters in this book. It's not that it's bad, it's just that compared to all the other reads that I have, it's not a page turner. So I have a lot more reading to do in this by the end of March if I'm to finish this quarterly read, and I will finish it. I give you my word on that. I will finish it. So that's it for part 1 of my February reads. What did you guys read in February? Please comment down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe. And as always, keep reading.